hooking you in from the first beat. What if the private Jerez test this week isn't just about bike speed, but a quiet reshuffle of the MotoGP era itself? Today we're dissecting a two-day, cross-brand test that could tilt the balance between the big manufacturers and the new engine rules on the horizon. I'm going to break down why Toprak Razgatlioglu's move to Spain matters, what the double-wheel meaning of Michelin and Pirelli on one track could trigger, and how this could ripple through 2026 and beyond. Let's dive in. I'm fascinated by how a single weathered test can rewrite seasons, so let me lay out the core ideas I'm watching and why they matter. First up, the dual-tire setup at Jerez. The what and the why behind Michelin and Pirelli sharing the same paddock. Personally, I think this signals a real intent to push development on both current 1,000 cubic centimeters bikes and the looming 850 cubic centimeters concept. What makes this really interesting is that it isn't a typical "bring your fastest racer and go fast" session. It's a controlled sandbox where teams can compare tire behavior directly, closing gaps in performance data that used to rely on separate test days. In my opinion, if you see meaningful feedback on both brands, we might witness a subtle but significant shift in tire strategy across the grid, not just for private tests, but for how manufacturers approach race weekends. Second, Toprak Razgatlioglu joining the mix. From my perspective, this isn't just a guest appearance. Razgatlioglu's presence signals Yamaha's willingness to leverage WorldSBK momentum into MotoGP hardware development. A detail I find fascinating is how a WorldSBK champion adapts to the MotoGP testing rhythm, how his feedback loops with engineers translate into tangible setup philosophies for AV4 at a private shakedown. What this really suggests is a deeper cross-pollination between supranational superbike thinking and Premier League MotoGP engineering. If you take a step back and think about it, the move could accelerate Yamaha's 1,000 cubic centimeters package refinements, while also informing potential 850 cubic centimeters roadmaps or racecraft philosophies. Third, the broader 850 cubic centimeters subplot. What many people don't realize is that the 850 cubic centimeters class is quietly reshaping how teams evaluate power delivery, chassis balance, and long-term durability under race conditions. KTM led this conversation last December as the first factory to publicly test an 850 cubic centimeters bike at Jerez, with Espargaro and Pedrosa, while others followed behind closed doors. A detail I find fascinating is how early-stage prototype work, sometimes near secrecy, can set parities or create new baselines that ripple through subsequent seasons. In my opinion, whether it's Ducati, Honda, Aprilia, or Yamaha, the 850 cubic centimeters exploration is less about a single horsepower bump and more about a different philosophy of how a bike rotates, how grip is exploited, and how riders manage tire life over a race weekend. Fourth, the practical impact on Goiânia's Round 2 and beyond. The calendar is tightening, Goiânia in late March, then a European private test rhythm that could be disrupted by a Qatar-leaning schedule. My take here is that teams will be watching closely whether the Jerez data translates to performance tokens on track in Brazil and beyond. If the private test yields actionable insights, teams might accelerate or prune testing plans, influencing rider readiness, sponsor narratives, and even factory confidence ahead of the European season kickoff in Jerez at the end of April. Now, a deeper look at what this test could imply for riders, teams, and the sport's trajectory. For Yamaha, Razgatlioglu's involvement isn't just prestige, it's a hands-on feedback engine. If his data aligns with or contradicts Dovizioso or Savadori's notes, you get a clearer picture of where Yamaha's 1,000 cubic centimeters chassis balance is headed. What makes this really interesting is the potential cross-pollination of riding styles. Razgatlioglu's aggressive, late-breaking WorldSBK approach could clash or harmonize with MotoGP's weight distribution and tire realities. This raises a deeper question. Would Yamaha lean into Razgatlioglu's feedback to tune for more front-end bite, or will they preserve a tried-and-true balance in fear of destabilizing the current package? For the tire duel, Michelin versus Pirelli is more than brand loyalty. It's a live experiment in how two different compounds, carcass structures, and profile philosophies handle the same chassis under the same track conditions. From my perspective, the outcome could influence tire development paths for all teams, not just the ones using private test days. If Pirelli shows a compelling advantage on certain corners, we might see strategic tire allocation shifts at race weekends, or at least more aggressive collaboration on future compound evolutions. For the 850 cubic centimeters concept, the stage is being set for a potential reimagining of what a MotoGP bike can be in terms of power delivery and chassis freedom. What this really suggests is that the sport isn't locking itself into a single engine formula, but rather running parallel experiments to hedge against future rules. If the 850 cubic centimeters path proves robust, expect debates about rider safety, reliability, and cost to surface in public discourse, potentially reshaping how teams plan their long-term investments. A quick moment on timing and strategy. This test at Jerez isn't just about who's fastest this week, it's about who's collecting the right data at the right time. Teams are balancing immediate race weekend readiness with longer-range roadmaps. The presence or absence of certain riders like Jack Miller, Fabio Quartararo, or Alex Rins will also color the narrative. If you're watching closely, you'll see a pattern. Private testing serves as a strategic pressure valve. It relieves the stress of making every on-track moment count during a race weekend and lets teams test extreme setups that would be risky in a public session. To tie it all together, here's my takeaway. This Jerez test is less about declaring a winner and more about setting the moral of the season. It signals a sport that's actively juggling multiple engine philosophies, tire ecosystems, and rider talents to future-proof itself against uncertain calendars and evolving tech constraints. The real tension isn't who's fastest today, but who can synthesize data from mixed tires, 1,000 cubic centimeters heritage, and 850 cubic centimeters experimentation into a coherent, adaptable strategy for the next 2 years. Closing thought. As fans, we're watching a backstage pass to the sport's next act. The decisions made in this private 2-day window could quietly shape who leads the pack in Qatar, how the European swing looks, and even how the manufacturers talk about reliability and rideability for the next generation of bikes. So I'll be tracking the tire chatter, Razgatlioglu's feedback cadence, and any signs of an 850 cubic centimeters blueprint taking more concrete form. What do you think will be the biggest takeaway from this test? Will it tilt the momentum toward Michelin or Pirelli? Will Razgatlioglu set up a surprising MotoGP debut narrative? Share your predictions in the comments, and let's crack this open together.